All right, thank you. This is a talk about type and millennials, and I'm going to beg your indulgence a bit because it's going to take a little bit to get to the type, but I promise we're going to get there and it's worth it. And so I want to tell you all a little story about when I was younger, and we used to watch a lot of baseball on television. And like most families back then, we had an antenna on the top of the roof that got the signal. And if a thunderstorm was coming in, the TV reception would get fuzzy. And the way that we handled this, because we were big baseball fans, is my brother would put his hands together like this. I would put my foot in his hands, and he would throw me up onto the roof. You can tell which one of us is the younger brother here, right? And what I would do is I would grab hold of the antenna, and I would start turning it. Now, mind you, we're doing this because a thunderstorm is on its way. And I am on the roof, grabbing hold of a giant metal antenna, and I am turning it. My brother's then yelling downstairs to my father, who's at the windows, and asking, "Is the reception better?" And my father's yelling back up, saying, "No, not yet." And then I continue to turn as the storm gets closer. And then I have to wait because the phone rings, and the phone is attached to the wall. And my father has to leave the line of sight of the television to pick up the phone because we don't have answering machines because they don't exist. So he has to get the phone, and then he has to stay on the phone because it's my grandmother, and she's calling long distance. And meanwhile, I'm standing there on the antenna with the lightning coming. I tell you all of this simply to make it clear that I am not a millennial. If you've ever been curious, what do we mean when we say millennials? What is this term referring to? It's anybody who doesn't have memories of that technology. Right? If you tell a millennial, I used to have to walk up to the television to turn it on and change the channel, they think you come from the Stone Age. If you want a year, I'll give you 1983. It's a good year. Another friend of mine made a comment and said, if you've met somebody recently in a bar and within an hour you get a photo texted to you of them half naked in the bathroom that they took with their cell phone, they're a millennial. And I am not one of them. And to a certain extent, I say thank God. And if you've ever tried to manage them, you're probably thinking to yourself, good God, what happened to all of them? And to understand millennials, and to understand how we can manage them, how we can work better with them, we have to understand two Frenchmen. Voltaire, and for those of you who saw John Beebe last night, you know I've been having conversations with him, and Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, in many ways, invented childhood as we know it. He wrote a book called The Emile, in which he said, let's not send the children to work. Let's not treat them like they're already little adults. Let's treat them like they have fresh, young minds. Let's educate them. Let's give them a chance to learn critical thinking. And in this way, he really did invent what we consider youth. And ever since then, the youth have been in revolt. And if you ask them what are they revolting against, it's simply, what have you got? Each are 20 years apart, each a different sort of revolution. Young Turks. And these are the actual Young Turks who were following Ataturk in the 1920s in Turkey to make it secular. But the youth sometimes, or often actually, are on the right side of history. Here are the tanks entering Prague in 1968, and here's how the kids responded. Rousseau is responsible for this. 20 years later in Tiananmen Square, the kids respond. And then 20 years later again, just this last spring, in the Middle East, it was the youth. The millennials, actually, that stood up, came out. This is a photo from Egypt. And we are left to admire the passion and at the same time have compassion for the folly. The thing you have to understand about millennials is they have grown up in a fundamentally different environment. And they have adapted to their environment. And one of the strangest switches between slides you're going to see this weekend, I'm going to take you to this. These are birds, and these are the different beaks that they have adapted to their environment, whether they're trying to get nectar out of flowers because they live in an environment with flowers, or they're beating through wood because they live in forests, or they live by the sea and they're dipping down and trying to collect fish. The beaks keep adapting to the environment. And so we have two questions about the millennials. What is the new environment, and what is the new beak? Give you an idea of the environment. In 1980, this was 20 gigabytes of memory. It weighed 4,400 pounds and cost over $1 million. This is a MemoBot. This is today. 16 gigabytes of memory. It weighs 2 ounces and costs $30. Your children carry in their back pocket more memory capacity than the United States government had fighting the Cold War. That is a new environment. And so the question is, what is the new beak that has been developed for this new generation? How have they adapted? And it's this. This is what they're using to engage with their environment, to suck the nectar out of the new flowers. You have to imagine the new world like this, a giant sphere. And on that sphere are these little boxes. And you're trying to access the sphere through the boxes. Because the sphere is full of information. That's the new environment. Massive amounts of information that we can interact with. This is the beak. And this is the beak. And these are communication devices, which begs the question, what language are the millennials speaking? And they tell us, which is really awesome. They tell us by using memes. Memes, as my partner Alan has explained to me, are the smallest replicable part of an idea. And I'm going to show you some examples of memes to give you an idea of how this generation is actually talking to one another. This is a famous photo, the Situation Room, as President Obama watches SEAL Team 6 raid Osama bin Laden's compound. Within 24 hours, the following photos showed up online. The lolcat put into it. The angry ring bearer girl being Barack Obama. Mike the Situation in the Situation Room. Kanye West creating a situation in the Situation Room. Osama bin Laden and Barack Obama playing PlayStation in the Situation Room. And you might be asking, so we know what, do you all know what this hat is, right? Princess Beatrice's hat, and then have you seen this one? Right? The millennials are smart, they're clever, they're fast. They have an expectation of the speed, they have an expectation of the ease with the technology. Here's every meme ever put into one giant picture. And that's what they do with pictures, and that's how they communicate quickly that way. I want to show you an example of how they communicate with music. So I'm going to show you a video. This is the official video of this song by the group called Daft Punk.
Work it, make it, do it, makes us harder, better, faster, stronger. More than power, never. Ever after work is over.
Okay, it's a nice video. Here are the words. Work it, make it, do it, makes us. Harder, better, faster, stronger. More than hour, never. Figuring that out was really difficult. Ever after work is over. That's it. Those are the words. How do you make a video to that song? It's an interesting question. The band obviously went to anime and did it that way. Fans started making videos, and I want to show you how the meme traveled through and how popular it was. That first video, the official video, got 4 million views, which is pretty good. Now I'm going to show you a little montage of what happened with the fan videos. That last guy is my favorite. He's from New Zealand. And there's actually no music. He is a cappellaing each part of the song. That's what the little boxes are, and then he's singing in the middle. So here he is in his bedroom in New Zealand, and 265,000 people have seen his little game. And you saw the numbers going there. This generation is playing ping pong with each other with the ideas, and they have the technology to do it. And they're clever with it, and they're fast with it. And while this was a little bit ridiculous, the marketers, who are always on top of this stuff, have learned the millennials' language very quickly. Here's different song, same group, picked up by a company you would probably expect.
Buy it, use it, break it, fix it, trash it, change it, mail, upgrade it, charge it, point it, zoom it, press it, snap it, work it, quick erase it. Technologic. Buy it, use it, break it, fix it, trash it, change it, mail, upgrade it, charge it, point it, zoom it, press it, snap it, work it, quick erase it, write it, cut it, paste it, save it, load it, check it, quick rewrite it. Buy it, use it, break it, fix it, trash it, change it, mail, upgrade it, charge it, point it, zoom it, press it, snap it, work it, quick erase it. Technologic.
They knew the language. And they were saying to the millennials, we know what's going on around there. And so now I want you to see what happens with the technology when they play games using their own archetypes. This is a scene from a show called Robot Chicken. And what they do is they take characters that they know from our mythology, our modern mythology, and they start mixing them because they can, because they have the ability to interact so easily. It keeps going. Jack Sparrow gets involved. Whoops, sorry. Jack Sparrow gets involved. It goes on and on. What I want to do is I want to show you a scene. It's not a scene, it's a commercial. And show you how people are figuring out that this is the language being spoken.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
So obviously, absolutely nothing to do with car insurance. Simply saying, we know how you talk. We speak your language. You will come and listen to us. And we need to let them teach us their language so that we can give them some of our wisdom. And that's what this is about. We're going to talk about millennials and their art now. This is a medical textbook, an illustrated medical textbook, very old. This artist takes them and he carves them. Nothing is added. This was all in the book. And he carves it out, and he creates new things. He takes old dictionaries, old illustrated books, and he just peels things away. And he creates these artistic wonders. And he does it with material that's already existing. That's kind of the point for him. Is that this stuff is already in there. He's just bringing it out. The mixing and matching of information, because we have so much that's recorded. That's the new environment, that we play with what already exists. My work is a collaboration with the existing material and its past creators. By altering physical forms of information and shifting preconceived functions, new and unexpected roles emerge. We all hear the word emergent. The millennials are all about what emerges from what happens to be lying around. That is their art. That is what they love. And one of the people who plays with this is Banksy. If any of you saw Exit Through the Gift Shop, he's a great street artist. He's very political. He's very funny. And he's famous for taking his own pictures and sneaking them into the Tate Modern in London and putting them on the wall. And it takes a while for people to notice. Here we have an iPod with the Virgin Mary. Right? Again, the new and the old, I'm going to mix it up. It doesn't matter. And here, And what's most important about this in terms of understanding the millennials is this woman is outside the frame. Banksy does this a lot. The millennials, and you have old and new together. The millennials do not accept the usual frames that we do. They do not accept that a picture has to be in there. Banksy does not accept the rigmarole he would have to go through to be in the museum. He just puts himself there. And here is a picture. It's kind of beautiful, this girl in her balloons, but it's the context that matters because all the world is a stage because the technology has allowed that. This takes on far greater meaning when you find out it's in the West Bank. Here's another one of his in Ramallah. Far more powerful on a wall in Ramallah than it is in a museum. Again, we see taking of an archetypal character of our modern mythology and using it as if it's his own, to make his own point. Coming upon this little girl in the street. And here's Banksy making a comment about how his own work on the street is treated. The cave paintings, which we take so much care of, as if they're just wiping away his own art that he's putting into the world because he doesn't accept the usual frames. The millennials don't accept any of that. And what that takes us to, at long last, and I thank you, is type. Here's some picture of what the millennials do. Really? This generation that is so dynamic, this generation that refuses to accept frames, this generation that is so interactive, so creative, so expecting their voice to be heard, and we're running with this, we're giving them this. They don't accept boxes. They don't accept frames. How are we going to engage them using this language? How are we going to engage them, not allowing them to participate? They're adapting. We have to start. So I'm just going to show you a possibility. Believe it or not, an INTP is here to present a model. Who would have known? It's not a real model. It's just a visual take on it. But imagine instead you get letters. And then they're allowed to choose the font. They're allowed to choose the size. They're allowed to choose the color. They're allowed to choose a background. I'm sorry, no, actually, they're allowed to choose a frame, which we won't call because they don't like them. And they're allowed to choose a background. And then they give them arrows. Dominant, extroverted, feeling. Auxiliary, introverted, intuiting. ENFJ. But it gives you a feeling for how this ENFJ views themselves. How this ENFJ feels they are in the world. And the ENFJ has gotten ownership over what it means by choosing the symbol, by choosing the visualization. It's a very visual group of people. Maybe they don't like the background. TN. Frame, background. INTP. An INTP that kind of likes the structure, likes the hardness, likes the logic, runs more with that. Maybe you have a softer INTP, views themselves more in the puzzle creation and the puzzle fixing. You can tell a lot through this idea of adding it to it, and you get that sense of ownership that it's yours. This is in general what it would look like. As they get to choose, they get to interact. And believe it or not, the millennials would start running with this and start adding all kinds of different imagery. I asked an ISFP to make these for me. Closed up, but this is what's going on inside. This is who she wants to be. And it tells me so much more about her and allows her so much more ownership over who she is, telling the world, than just ISFP would. Perhaps this one, quieter one, more what you might expect of it. Artful, but so subtle. ESTJ, keeping the world going, staying strong. Susan, if you could choose anything you wanted, really, I'm not telling you you have to have this. Introverted intuiting, extroverted thinking, INTJ, with the infinity signs in the back, really running with that introverted intuiting. INTP, gotten in touch with their anima, going for that softer extroverted feeling, trying to say, I'm different, I've grown. Tells you so much more, allows the person to express themselves. Somebody can actually start changing it as they go through their development. ENFJ's been in the corporate world. Want you to know that they can be hard, they can get things done, they can build things. I'm now a senior VP. All of this takes me to, I guess, what we would call the third act. As I said, I've been having conversations with John Beebe about some of this. And when he first saw me do this in a much longer version, he said, I think you have 2 acts. You don't have your third act yet, which, of course, was a great challenge to me. So this is my first run at the third act of this, which is, so what do we do? How do we engage the millennials? How do we actually manage them? How do we help them? And so I'm going to start with Xerxes, Emperor of Persia, extroverted intuiting, just coming at him gangbusters right now, I know. He was trying to invade Greece, and he was trying to cross the Hellespont, a little bit of water in between Asia and Europe. And his first attempt, his ships got sunk, and he was furious. And he ordered his men to whip the waves. He lashed the sea. And I would say that this is somebody who is not particularly well integrated with their soul. Which takes me to Ahab, who chased the white whale because it was either a mask for nature or nature itself, which he believed had malice towards him. And he would exact his revenge. As he said, I would strike the sun if it offended me. Harold Bloom referred to Ahab as the American Prometheus, that hubris against nature. Again, I would say, not particularly integrated with his anima, with his soul, going out, attacking that in that boat. Jung went and met his anima in the form of Salome, and what she did is she offered him all of the collective unconscious. And he said, all right, I'll take it. And of course, hubris. Youth by their very nature. Passion, it's admirable. And yet, there's folly there. Not integrated. The millennials, for all of their knowledge of technology, for all of their ability to manipulate that world, they lack wisdom. They are not integrated. They're young. That's how it works. Which brings us to Voltaire. At long last, I know you're dying to know why he's up here. If Rousseau created childhood, in many ways, Voltaire gave us the answer to how to mature out of childhood. When Jung said, yes, I will take all of the collective unconscious, that was a youthful move. That was doing this. That's taking on the entire state by yourself. It's too much. It was only when Jung turned around and said, I have limits. I cannot accept all of it, that he was able to actually integrate with his soul. Voltaire, which a bust of his was in Jung's study, wrote the book Candide. And in Candide, a young man goes out into the world with admirable passion. He's going to make it better. He's going to make his mark on it. It's going to be great. And all kinds of things befall him. Horrible things. And as many horrible things as befall him, he keeps thinking to himself, this is the best of all worlds. I will try again. And Voltaire has tremendous compassion for Candide. And at the end, the way Candide transitions from the boy who thinks he can change the entire world into a man is he recognizes his limits. And at the very end of Candide, he says, I will tend my garden. Jung ends the Red Book with a very similar sentiment. The recognition of your limits, the willingness to tend a small garden, is the first step to being able to start integrating some of our lower functions. The millennials, by the very nature of being so young, haven't even begun that, which is why they have such passion. It's our job to get them to recognize their limits. We have to give them responsibility and be prepared for them to fail and to have compassion for their folly, so that we can then help them start integrating. And if we have the right language to communicate with them, we can use type in the way it was designed to help them with that process to create a generation of 77 million kids that might actually be a little more integrated with their souls. Thank you.